for coming. Do you all kayak?
Yeah.
That means that some of you understand English. Yeah? How many of you understand some English? Several. I'm not going to test you. It's okay. The slides tonight are just a few pictures from around the world. What I do for my living, I don't know what has already been said, but what I do for a living is kayaking. It's what I love. Do you need a translation?
就是今天非常谢谢大家来到这边哦。那我不知道刚刚主持人怎么介绍我的，但我要跟大家讲说，今天我跟大家讲的是，就是我会介绍一些我到世界各地再去做独木舟的经验。然后我想说，我非常喜欢独木舟跟做出的热情，我今天跟大家来分享我的经验。
So when I was young, I decided that I wanted to do something that I liked doing. I wasn't so interested in making a lot of money. I wanted to be happy doing what I did. And I looked at people around me, and so many of them had jobs that they didn't like, that they did to earn a living 5 days a week, and then they'd work for that 2 days a week when they could go and enjoy themselves.
那我从小就决定说，我以后要做的事就是我喜欢有热情的那种。我对于金钱没有那么的喜欢，但我想要就是要开心要快乐。我看到我周边有很多人呢，他们就是要去工作，就是为了周一到周五工作，然后就是可以贪图就是周末那2天可以好好休息一下。那我自己不一样，我自己就是比较喜欢做有热情的事。
So instead of that, I wanted to do 5 days a week doing something I wanted to do, and then 2 days off at the weekend having fun doing what I wanted to do.
其实就是周一到周五了，我就做我有兴趣的事，然后周六周日我也做我有兴趣，所以我每天在做我有兴趣的事。
So I do kayaking for my job, and I do kayaking for fun.
所以说，独木舟是我的工作，也是我的热情。
And I travel around the world teaching kayaking.
我在世界各地就是教授，就是如何就是划船、划独木舟。
And the main thing that I teach is how to do a lot with your kayak, with a lot of control, with the minimum amount of effort.
那我主要教授怎么样划独木舟，就是要教大家如果用最少的力量来控制好独木舟。
Because it's the lesson that was the hardest one for me to learn.
因为这是我学习过程中是最困难的一部分。
That you can be out in a strong wind, and you can fight the wind all day. You can be out in the waves and fight the waves all day, but you don't have to. It's possible to let the winds help you and work with them, and it's possible to let the waves help you and work with them.
就是你们今天去划独木舟的时候，遇到什么大风大浪，然后我们今天要做的就是说，如何让这些风、这些浪来帮助我们划好独木舟。
And when I'm not kayaking and I'm not traveling around the world, I like to write and I like to design. So I design kayaks and paddles and life jackets and accessories for kayaking, and I write magazine articles and books, mostly about kayaking.
所以我没有在划独木舟的时候，我也没有在就是在世界各地旅游的时候，我会写书啊，然后我会做一些设计，我会设计独木舟、设计桨，甚至设计救生衣。然后我也为一些杂志写一些专栏，然后我也出过一些书。
My latest book last year was Encounters from a Kayak, and it has 39 stories from around the world for meeting people, animals, special places, and the things that wash up on the beach.
然后我最新出版那本书就是《Encounters from Kayak》，那书里面记载着我在世界各地上面39个故事，然后遇到哪些人，遇到哪些动物，还有甚至去过哪些有趣的景点。
Can everyone hear okay?
大家都听得清楚吗？
可以。
Yeah. Then I'll start. Do we have more lights that we can turn off?
可以开一下灯，
There.
可以关一下灯。
Thank you.
关一下灯。
Yeah. I come from England, my home where I grew up, and this is me, a picture of me when I was little.
然后我来自英国，英国是我的家乡，这就是我小时候的照片。
And my first kayak was a canvas kayak with a wood frame and a skin.
那我第一艘独木舟它是非常简单，它就是有一个船的骨架，然后外面就是这样包覆着，非常简单。
And that was in 1967, before most of you were born.
就是那时候是1967年，那时候很多人都还没有出生。
Brighton, my hometown, is on the south coast of England.
然后我的家乡是在 Brighton， 它是在英国的南方。
And there is a royal palace there.
那边有皇宫。
And chalk cliffs.
那边还有很多的悬崖，像这样子的悬崖。
And steep flint beaches.
然后可以看到像这样有这样铺石的这种沙滩。
And a pier.
当然还有码头。
And one of the things that I like to eat when I'm back home is fish and chips.
那我最喜欢吃的就是 fish and chips， 就是薯条跟炸鱼片。
The beach, when the sea is rough, is difficult to land and launch.
我们看到就是水流很湍急的时候是很难着陆的。
In a kayak, but it's where I learned to kayak.
不过这就是我怎么样来学独木舟。
And where I used to play in my fiberglass kayak.
你看，就是我们就做一个就是像是撑杆跳的一个行为，像这样子。
Learning how to do maneuvers in the air.
就看着空中这样做。
Unfortunately, fiberglass isn't that strong, and I used to repair it in the sunshine the next day.
因为船身是由玻璃纤维做的，所以说我这样刚刚大家看到照片，如果这样做的话，之后就要修理一下船身。
Now I live in Seattle, in Washington, in the United States, where in the wintertime you get some snow, but summertime it's nice, warm weather, and not too humid.
那我现在住在是华盛顿州的西雅图，然后冬天的时候可以看到雪，然后夏天的时候是蛮好的，而且不会太潮湿。
Has a reputation for being a rainy place, and that's to keep the tourists away.
然后西雅图常常下雨，所以就很多游客不会来。
My nearest bit of water, or one of the nearest bits, 5 minutes away from where I live, is the Fremont Canal, which joins a big lake to one side of Seattle to the salt water on the other side of Seattle.
那我住就是离我家最近的水域大概5分钟，然后它是一个运河，它一边是接着是西雅图的一个大湖，另外一边接的是海水。
And it's a really interesting place to explore all the ships that come in and all the places underneath the docks, underneath the piers, in around the fishing boats.
那在这个地方，我们可以看到各式各样的船，然后很有趣的地方，我们可以观察一下那边的船坞啊，或者是那边的码头长什么样子。
Sometimes I also go in a canoe. I enjoy canoe as well as kayak, and I have that luxury when I'm at home that I can choose.
那我自己非常喜欢独木舟，但我也喜欢非常皮艇 Kayak， 然后这两种都是我可以选择的休闲活动。
Cody is Chinese.
那是我的朋友 Cody， 他是大陆来的。
His father is American, and his mother here is from Shanghai.
是上海来的。
There was a large number of people in Seattle are from Asia.
所以在西雅图很多人是亚洲人。
I like to look at the old boats and write down the names, and then I search on the internet to find out the history behind them, because some of them have a very long history. This boat, the Acania, was the gift of a French film director to a very pretty movie star back in the 1930s, Cynthia Bennett, and very, very expensive yacht, motor yacht.
那我自己非常喜欢观察一些比较老旧的船只哦，而且会记录下它的名字，然后上网去查说这些船背后的历史和故事。那像这艘船呢，其实是一个法国的导演送给一个就是一个女明星的一艘船，那个女明星叫做Cynthia Bennett。
this boat here, I haven't found out how long it's been there, but when I first went to Seattle and paddled down the canal was 15 years ago, and it was there then, and it is still there.
这艘船就是我刚到西雅图的时候就已经在，它已经有15年的历史，到现在还不知道这艘船它的历史跟故事是什么。
And nearby there is another boat, another ship called the Helena Star, which was impounded or confiscated by the Coast Guard for smuggling drugs. That's this boat here, the ship.
它附近有一艘船，它名叫做 Helena Star， 那它是被那个海巡署没收，因为它就是做一些毒品贩运，所以而被没收。
It was sailing towards Seattle full of marijuana, and it didn't have the proper licensing, so the Coast Guard stopped it to look at the papers and then to verify, because it was not sure what the name was, because it has two names on the front, Monica Star and Helena Star, and they checked on the papers and they had to go to find the number inside on the main beam, and when they went down to find the number on the main beam to check, they found this millions of dollars worth of marijuana.
这艘船开向西雅图的时候，船上就带了很多的大麻，而且这艘船并没有就是政府核发的，就是一些证照哈，而且它的名称有两个叫做什么 Monica Star 或是 Helena Star， 所以说海巡署觉得很奇怪，上船一查，就发现说有很多的大麻，所以最后这艘船就被扣押了。
So it stayed here for about 23 years until a tree started growing out of the hole. We wondered whether there was marijuana growing down there too.
所以这艘船就在那边停了23年，然后还长了一棵树，所以有些想说这边里面是不是就是大麻长出来的。
And then last year they towed it away and took it to Tacoma, which is a little further south from Seattle, and it is still there.
然后就是去年呢，它就被拖往叫西雅图南方的地点。
Thank you. And this is an old fire ship. There's not smoke, it's just fog.
这是一架标岛的船，大家看到这边有很多的雾。
But it would normally put out fires. Where to next?
那我们下一站要去哪里呢
We go to Italy.
我们就到意大利去。
And in Italy, when you're paddling a little in the north, you come across signposts on the water that say Venezia or Venice, and Caole in the other direction, but Venice is where we're going to go.
我们在划船的时候看到刚看到那两个招牌，上面一个显示威尼斯，另外一个是Caole，
which is famous for its gondolas, these boats.
我们可以看到在威尼斯很多人会撑高划这种船。
And the whole city is built around water.
而且城市里面四周都是水，
So the houses stick out of the water.
所以我们可以看到房子都是出入在水池上面的。
And you can go all through the city and the canals.
我们可以就是在运河上面到各个城市去。
Every year they have a big festival
每年我们都会举办一个很大的盛会，
called the Vogalonga,
这个盛会名字叫 Vogalonga，
which means the big row, or the long row.
就是它意思是说你必须要划船划很久的意思。
And it was started as a festival for the gondoliers, people who did the gondolas, as a protest against all the powerboats that went around the city, making a lot of damage to the buildings.
他们一开始就是他这个活动一开始其实是抗议的，就是撑高的人他们对政府的一些抗议。
So they held a race, but the race near the finish comes into a narrow place, and all the gondolas got jammed in the narrow place, and people started fighting. So they thought that next year they were going to have it just as a festival.
所以说一开始他们的形式是一开始比赛，因为它的这个运河它是越缩越小，越缩越小，所以大家划船划到就是比较像是比较窄的地方就过不去，所以他们隔一年就决定说，那我们就不要比赛了，我们直接举办庆典盛会就好了。
So for the last, I think, 32 or 33 years, they've been holding this festival, and it now gathers 6,000 people every year to go onto the water in human-powered boats. to paddle around the Venice Lagoon, around the islands in a big loop, and back around through to the start.
所以大家可以看到，这过去30年来，它就一直有举办这样的庆典活动，会吸引到6000多人来这边划船。那我们可以看到刚刚那个地图上面有一些西湖啊，有一些水道啊，他们都会在里面划。
Everyone gathers by St. Mark's Square for the start. And then there is a cannon that fires to give the start. If they're accurate, one ship goes down with the cannonball.
他们在划船的时候，最后会有船发射像大炮的东西。如果说发射够准的话，就一艘船会因此沉下去。
And then everyone heads off in one massive group of boats.
所以很多人都会这样划船划过去。
It's very friendly and very fun. I recommend you go there.
这个活动非常的有趣，所以我鼓励大家也去参与这样的活动。
If you see this boat, this one is a very good one to go close to. It's the wine boat.
大家可以看一下这个船很有趣，我们称它是一个酒船。
So they only carry wine.
所以这艘船上载的都是酒。
This island was very well known for its lace making.
这个岛屿非常有趣的地方在于说，它是专门就是制造蕾丝的地方。
And every house has to be a different color for every family.
而且我们可以看到这边的房子，每一个房子颜色都不一样。
It's not a race, so it's okay to stop for espresso.
当然这也是个比赛啦，所以说大家也会来这边来喝个咖啡啊。
And then towards the end of the trip, everyone comes down into the narrow place and has to stop.
所以大家刚刚提到，就是我们水道会越来越窄，最后大家都会挤成一块，然后大家不得已就必须要停下来。
And now you can see why it's so good to be in a gondola with the oar close to the boat.
所以这边可以看到说，大家这边撑篙的人，他们都是紧紧挤在一块的。
Rather than in rather than in the rowing scull, with the oars coming right out a long way.
但它不一样啊，这地方大家就可以把桨撑得比较开一点。
Which is very difficult.
其实是刚刚那种情况是非常困难的。
Once through onto the Grand Canal, it gets more space and it's much easier to move. And we start reaching the famous bridges.
我们到就是大运河的部分的时候，空间比较宽，大家要移动比较方便。这是我们就是这座桥是非常有名的。
Where all the people come out to cheer on all of the boats as they come through.
大家可以看到这边桥上有非常多人都在欢呼。
Then after the festival, you get a medal and a certificate, and then you find your way back.
就是到最后面的时候，大家都会去拿到奖牌啊，或者拿到证书，然后最后就回家。
So there's some very nice paddling apart from Venice, but in that area with thatched cottages that the fishermen use, and restaurants on the water, and campgrounds that's very easy to kayak from.
所以这个地方是非常有趣哦，就是在威尼斯啊，我们会看到很多的房子啊，很多的一些渔庄啊，甚至一些就是餐馆，就是个很有趣的，就是独木舟的经验。
Now Spark was in San Diego for some time.
那我们的口远今天他之前是住在 San Diego.
This is San Diego. This is especially for Spark.
那这是给我们口远，那就是他之前是住在 San Diego 的地方。
And in certain parts of America, everything is supposed to be much bigger.
在美国这些东西都是比较大的。
This is an Austin mini car.
那不过这个是个迷你车哦。
And this is a tent for a family.
那这是给一个家庭的一个帐篷，家庭的帐篷。
And in San Diego, we often go down for a sea kayaking symposium to meet friends and play guitar around the fire, sing.
我们在San Diego我们会做独木舟啊，然后晚上时候和朋友聚在一块，围着萤火唱歌。
And then we head off down to Baja, Mexico, just over the border.
然后再往南的话，跨了国境就到墨西哥。
Where everything is different.
每一件在墨西哥东西都不大一样。
when it rains, all the flowers come out.
下雨过后，就是花都开了。
When it doesn't rain, it's desert.
如果不下雨呢，就像沙漠一样。
We camp on the top of the cliff, above a little beach.
然后我们会爬到上面，就是这个崖端的最顶端，然后下面是海滩。
And go out to explore around the rocks.
然后我们到处就会去划着独木舟到处去探险的。
And this is where the kayaking skills that we practice with bow rudders and stern draws and draw strokes, make it safe to maneuver between the rocks without hitting them.
我们看到这边的地形是非常复杂的，我们这边就必须要运用各式各样的独木舟的技巧。
Because it would be a pity to damage the rocks.
因为这么说好，如果说我们今天技术不好，就伤害到那岩石，那就不好了。
Here are sea lions.
我们可以看到岩石上面有一些海狮。
And a cormorant.
然后这边有一个小动物。
And plenty of rough places to play.
然后这里可以看到，就是水流是非常的湍急，然后我们可以在这边探险。
Here is a famous blowhole, and the crowds of people gather to watch the waves go in and spray up into the air.
我们可以看到崖上有很多人在观看，看到这边水上湍急可以激起很多的浪花，大家在这边观浪，就在这边观赏。
Here is a seal.
有看到这边的小海狮。
And the seal was playing around this rock, but we were also playing around the rock.
那小海狮会在这个岩石附近就是玩，我们也会在这个附近玩耍。
And when the waves come, you go over the top.
而且这边的浪花可以激起很高到就是这个岩石的顶端。
Sometimes everything doesn't go quite right.
所以我这样的情形，就是整个人飞起来。
It's not a good place to be. So there are always people that want to sit, having had their fun on the water. They sit and relax with a beer on the top of the cliff, watching everybody getting into difficulty.
有些人会在就是水上玩嘛，有些人就是在崖上面看大家足球这样子。
And taking pictures when things go wrong.
然后会在就是大家最尴尬的时候拍照片。
Now here something is going wrong. There's a bigger than normal set of waves coming through. These waves are bigger than they have been all day, about twice as big.
我们可以看到这边呢，就是这边比较特别的地方有两个大浪这样过来。
So this kayaker here
那边有一个独木舟，大家看得到。
is just going one end over the other in the wave
就要翻掉了。
on the wrong side of the rock.
就撞到石头上面。
It was me. It wasn't a good place to be. In this rock here, the kayak came upside down against the rock, and the end broke down like this, and the foot braces broke.
然后我们整个独木舟就撞到岩石上面，然后前端就破掉了，破裂了，折进来，整个折进来了。
And when I rolled up, I was on the top of the rock.
然后最后我人就在这个岩石上。
It's good to be able to roll. This is not a good place to be because there is another wave coming.
那这种情况下不是很好，因为有另外一股的浪又要过来。
So I got out of the kayak and tried to hold on to it when the next wave came.
所以说我就想办法就是撑在那边，然后等下一股的浪过来。
And then you can see the sea is quite different, quite calm.
所以说现在看到这样的海水后面其实是非常平静的。
So I was able to empty the kayak, climb down to the water and start again on a sinking boat, and just about made it to the shore before I sank.
所以说最后我就把我的独木舟变成这样，然后最后我就下来。
There are other things apart from kayaking. You can look at the sea urchins. There's some very pretty ones there.
除了独木舟之外，我们还看到一些生物，刚刚看到的海胆、螃蟹
and the starfish. If you no longer have a kayak. And that section of coast, when it is not too rough, there are some long tunnels that you can explore. But it's very difficult to know if it's a long tunnel whether you'll get a big wave coming while you're still in it.
就是如果说海水不太汹涌的话，我们可以到一些就是海边的洞里面去探险。但是要注意，就是说之后会不会有大浪过来。
So here we're coming in through this entrance,
我们从右边的洞口进来，
down into the cave, and then out this way.
穿过洞里，从左边的洞出去。
So a little taste of Baja.
那这边就是巴哈的情形。
And now to the Faroe Islands.
接下来我们看到是菲罗岛。
The Faroe Islands are about halfway between Scotland and Iceland, with Norway over here.
刚好这个岛就是在瑞典，然后英格兰的北边，然后还有冰岛的中间这样子。
They have a lot of houses with grass roofs, because when they grow the grass on the roof, it keeps the house quiet when it's very, very windy, and it keeps the roof on the house when it's very, very windy, and they have strong winds.
当地有很多的房子，他们都是种草的。还有一个好处就是说，如果风太大的话，这些草可以帮助隔音。
And when the grass gets too long, they put a sheep up there.
如果草长太长的话，他们就会放羊来吃草。
There used to be a lot of whaling in Faroe Islands for a short time when the big whaling boats were going out hunting whales.
过去有一段时间，在这个岛上，他们会从事一些猎鲸的活动。
So these are the ribs of a whale.
这就是那个鲸鱼的肋骨。
And this is a whale vertebrae, one of the backbone.
这是鲸鱼的，就是脊骨。
The museum there has some of the whaling harpoons that were used for hunting whales.
那当地有就是有博物馆，那里面有陈列一些就是捕猎鲸的一些工具。
It shows how the whales were cut up.
就是当时他们猎鲸的情形。
But before the big whaling boats came in, the local people had always caught the small whales, the pilot whales, using small rowing boats.
就是在大鲸鱼来之前，就是当地人会去猎捕一些小鲸鱼，然后那些小鲸鱼是所谓的巨头鲸
，like this one.
那可以看到这边的船，他们用的船只是这样子的。
And here we have 230 pilot whales that have been brought in by the small boats and killed on the beach.
那这些巨头鲸就是刚刚那些小船，就是猎进来的。
This was some years ago when I was in the Faroe Islands.
是许多年前我到这个岛上的时候看到的景象。
And I met a man, Trond Patterson here, who has whale meat drying under the eaves of the house.
然后当时我就遇到这个人，他就是把一些鲸鱼肉挂在那边风干。
Going back to the same beach, years later, I found ear bones from the whale.
几年之后，我发现的这些东西，这些东西是鲸鱼的耳骨
，which are about this size.
它大小只有这么大而已。
And they're as hard as stone, very, very dense bone, the most dense bone.
而且是非常非常的坚硬，它们的骨质密度非常的高。
Faroe Islands are very high, steep cliffs, and the tallest cliffs there are more than twice the height of the 101 tower, and vertical, straight up.
这个岛屿它非常的高哦，它上面最高的那个悬崖呢，是台湾101的2倍高之多。
This island is famous for its wild birds, seabirds nesting, and through the gaps in the middle between these islands are tide races, where the tide is pushing through at 10 knots.
可以看到这个岛，刚刚我上面指的这个岛呢，其实有很多的鸟类会这边就是哺育它们的后代，然后中间的海潮呢，它们的速度非常快，可以高达10节。
So this little gap here, there will be a couple of photographs of that channel.
我们在这样的小小的海域里面，我拍了一些照片。
That's a rainbow.
大家看到这边有彩虹。
But this is the gap.
这就是我刚刚指的，就是那个就是小小海域的地方。
Coming north from the Faroe Islands, you come to Iceland.
就是 Faroe Island 再往北就是冰岛了。
And the ferry comes into the east coast to a place called Seyðisfjörður. See if Spark can get that one. It doesn't matter. And in 1977, with Jeff Hunter, I circumnavigated Iceland. Was the first to paddle around Iceland.
1977年的时候，我和我的朋友 Jeff Hunter， 我们就是环绕冰岛一周。
Paddling my first design of sea kayak.
那这是我第一次设计的独木舟。
It's a very wild and beautiful place. This is part of the skull of a sperm whale.
这是
Jeff sitting in it.
这海域非常漂亮，大家看到这是抹香鲸的头骨的部分。
The Western Islands, we camped on Hot Beach, which was from the volcanic activity from 1973 when the volcano erupted on Hime and buried half of the town and almost closed off the entrance to the harbour.
这是我们在冰岛西边上岸，当时就是1973年的时候，就是火山的活动还非常的频繁，然后火山一爆发的时候，他们很多人就没有办法上岸。
We stopped for 2 or 3 days with this man, who was a fisherman farmer, who gave us some very strong, horrible smelling meat to try. We had no idea what it was, but it was the stinkiest thing that I've ever had. It's twice as stinky as stinky tofu.
我有2-3天就跟这人在一起，他给我们这种非常臭的东西吃，然后这个东西比臭豆腐还要臭。
It took me 3 years to recover.
就是2-3年之后，我才办法就是不会想起这个臭味。
Even after smelling flowers.
闻花香也没有办法盖掉这样的臭味。
So going back to Iceland, I've been back many times because I love the people there and I love the country. So I go back to visit, and I took my wife there to see some of the places that I liked.
之后我又陆陆续续就回到冰岛去看，我非常喜欢冰岛人，也非常喜欢这个国家。之后我还带着我的妻子一起去
，including this crack in the earth, in the rock.
大家可以看到这边有一个碎裂的地形
，where inside there is a hot pool of water. It's a little bit too hot to swim, but it's good for washing your feet.
对面的水非常的烫啊，是没有办法游泳，但是可以用这样的湖水来洗澡。
Sulfur.
那这个是硫磺。
Boiling mud pools.
然后这边是一些就是泥泉，然后是非常烫的。
Steam vents.
然后这边是有些冒气的一些地形。
Big waterfalls.
这边有大瀑布。
And always snow and ice somewhere in Iceland.
然后在冰岛上到处都可以看到雪。
This is quite close to where the Kayak Club is on the east coast.
然后它和东边的就是独木舟俱乐部非常的近。
A little place called Egilsstaðir.
那地方叫Egilsstaðir.
Where they hold a sea kayaking symposium, and they invited me to go out there to the sea kayaking symposium because they wanted to hear the story about the first people who paddled around Iceland.
他们当时就举办了一个讲座，然后邀我过去，来跟大家分享一下我是就是世界上第一个去环绕离岛一周的人，来给他们分享经验。
So we met people who knew the faces of the people in the photographs.
所以说我们就是认识了就是照片上的一些人。
We had a practice with a helicopter doing some rescues for the Coast Guard so that they could see what happened when they tried to rescue kayakers.
那时候我们有做一些演练，就是说如果说发生一些问题的时候，我们要怎么样跟直升机来配合进行救援的动作。
And it was a day with very little wind, so the wind from the helicopter blew straight down, and it blew the kayaks away.
当天其实没有什么风的，可是因为直升机的螺旋桨会制造风，所以就把独木舟给吹走。
So the man on the end of the wire was chasing the kayaks all over the field.
可以看到，就是这样垂掉下来那个，就在追着我们的独木舟跑。
But eventually, picked up Kristen, my wife, and went off with her for a ride around the field, and then came back to blow her kayak back to shore.
最后就救起我太太 Kristen， 然后最后把我们的独木舟带上岸。
And then it hovered over the water to make wind, so that the kayakers could find out how easy it was to control the kayaks in wind.
在这种情况下，就是直升机会非常贴近水面，所以说我们这些划独木舟的可以了解说，在有风的情况下，在这样的情况之下要怎么样应对。
Mostly they couldn't stay upright.
但很多人就是没有办法在独木舟上面坐。
These are Arctic char, which are very, very tasty type of salmon.
这种鲑鱼是非常好吃的一种鲑鱼。
And some fishermen came round in the middle of the night in a remote fjord up in the northwest fjords when we were kayaking with a group up there.
就是当时就是大家可以看到，就是那时有很多渔夫会在半夜的时候去捕捉这样的鱼。
And they said, "Would you like to come back to our house for coffee?"
然后他们问我说：“你们要到我们家来喝杯咖啡？”
I said, "Well, yes, please.
我说
5 o'clock in the morning, it's a good time for coffee."
然后一到早上的时候，当然喝杯咖啡当然是好的。
And we got to the house and they said, before we have coffee, come.
然后他们就说，我们到家就是说，在我们喝咖啡之前，我们再做一些其他事吧。
I think this is where the toilet is because the smell was very strong.
大家可以看到这个地方可能就是所谓的厕所，因为它味道非常的臭。
But it's where these men catch Greenland shark.
但是就是这些人，他们利用这样子的一个地方来捕捉 Greenland， 就是这种鲨鱼 Greenland shark。
Greenland shark is poisonous to eat, so they bury them in the beach.
那这种鱼类是有毒的，所以说他们会把它放在这样的岸上。
For 6 months.
而且要放上6个月。
And then they dig them up to see what they smell like.
然后他们才会把这些鱼给之前说他们要放在这个地方，之后把它们挖出来，然后看看它们的味道变得怎么样。
And then they hang them in this drying shed for 6 months.
他们大家看到就是在旁边有斜面的这个结构，他们会放在这上面，然后放6个月。
And then they cut it into little pieces.
然后他们把鱼肉切的这种的小块
and feed it to passing kayakers.
来喂那些就是独木舟的滑行者。
It was very difficult to get it past my nose without being sick.
我觉得要闻这个味道实在非常的难受。
But in the mouth, it tasted like a very, very strong, ripe camembert cheese from France that has been left in the back of the car for too long.
它的口感就有点像是就像是一种法国的起司，然后放在车上放太久的那个味道。
So we left Iceland.
好，那我们现在就离开就是到下一站去。
And go down to Florida.
现在去佛罗里达州。
And look for manatees.
这个是芦艮。
Now these are gentle vegetarians.
它是非常温和，也他们吃素。
And they are slow moving. They move about the same speed as a kayak.
他们的就是移动速度非常慢，就跟独木舟差不多。
And they're very curious.
他们也非常的具有好奇心。
So if you hang upside down in your kayak with a face mask, they will come up to you to have a look like this.
如果说你倒过来看，就是倒到水中来看这些动物的话，你就会看到他们是长这样子的。
And you don't have to be able to roll. It helps if you can roll, do an Eskimo roll. But you don't have to because you could hold on to another kayak.
你不见得要划桨，你可以就是撑着另外一个独木舟，然后倒过来看这些生物。
The manatees come into the rivers that are fed from springs coming out of the rock. And the water from the springs is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit
他们吃的
all year round.
他们吃的食物其实由海里面的一些比较高温的泉水这样涌上来的。他们吃里面从这些泉水带来一些生物是他们的食物。
So because it's always warm in these rivers, when the Gulf of Mexico cools down in winter, they all come into the rivers to keep warm.
因为这样的他们这样的海水其实比较温暖的，然后在墨西哥湾的时候，在墨西哥湾墨西哥湾就是的水温变高的时候，他们就会到墨西哥湾来来生活。
There is a sea kayaking symposium in Florida every year, and I usually go down there. This year I was in Australia, but I usually go to Florida then.
通常每年的话，就是在佛罗里达都会有一个独木舟的讲座，通常每年都会去。不过今年我在澳洲顺便去。
So if any of you want to come over and paddle in Florida and see manatees, February is the month.
所以大家如果说对佛罗里达来做独木舟有兴趣的，看这些生物，看如艮这种生物的话，2月是最好的季节。
The water, the further upstream you go, the clearer the water.
我们越往上游去的话，水质越清澈。
You see strange birds like roseate spoonbills.
我们可以看到这种鸟类，
brightly coloured.
它们的颜色非常的鲜艳。
And the water is incredibly clear.
而且水质非常的清澈。
But not all rivers are good for swimming. You would think that with warm water and clear, it would be the perfect place to go swimming. But not all the rivers are good. This river is closed to swimmers.
大家可能会想说，如果说水很温暖，然后水又很清澈的话，一定适合游泳。其实并不是每一个河流都适合游泳。
It's not good to be bitten by an alligator because they are carnivores.
我们都知道，就是鳄鱼吃肉，所以说没有人想要被鳄鱼吃。
And there are some nice places at the side of the river. If you don't go swimming, you can go and sit on a log and have your lunch.
就是有些地方是不能去，就是不能就是不适合游泳的啦。这边就有鳄鱼。
It's quite a large alligator.
这些鳄鱼的体型蛮大的。
Could they attack the kayak?
They could, but they generally don't.
他们通常是不会攻击，就是划独木舟的人。
Normally they stay at a distance, and just occasionally you get one that's more curious and more bold, and they can be dangerous.
他们鳄鱼通常都会和就是划独木舟人保持距离，不过有些比较小的鳄鱼，它会比较好奇心，而且比较大胆，所以大家就比较小心一点。
Last year there was a burglar. He'd broken into a house, and the police were chasing him, and he ran into a lake to swim across to escape, and he was eaten by an alligator.
去年就是有一个小偷，就是他们是破门而入，然后他被警察追，就跑到河里面，最后就被鳄鱼给吃了。
He was having a bad day.
所以他运气非常不好。
When the river is low, the alligators are quite high up on the banks. They can be up in the grass, and when you go past, they jump down. So when you get a big alligator coming off the bank, it's
当水位低的时候，就是鳄鱼通常会在岸上、在草的地方，他们可能会可能会突然间跳下来，然后给就是划船人吓一大跳。
So now to Sweden.
好，接下来我们到瑞典去。
And Stockholm is over here, but there is also a west coast of Sweden.
右边是斯德哥尔摩
close to Norway. Stockholm is the capital city.
斯德哥尔摩是首都。
Where in the autumn you get a lot of very nice fungi, chanterelles, and
这边有很多的香菇去菌类的一些植物。
Stockholm is built around a lake and also around the Baltic. And there is a lock that you have to go up and down to go between the two levels. The lake is higher than the sea, the Baltic Sea.
斯德哥尔摩它就是环海的旁边还有一个波罗的海。
In the Bronze Age, they were the same level. So a few thousand years ago, the sea level was the same level as the lake, and people could come in and out.
在很久很久以前，他们就是这两个水域的水位是一样高的，所以说以前的居民要进出是非常容易的。
But at the time of the Vikings, it became a rapid where the lock is, as the sea level was falling, and there became a fast water at Stockholm.
但是在维京的海盗那个时代，他们水位就变得不一样，就水位因为水位不一样，水变比较湍急。
So Stockholm became a very important trading place between all the lake system on the one side and the Baltic on the other. It became the capital city of Sweden.
斯德哥尔摩后来就变成一个商业都市啊，一边是湖泊啊，另外一边是海洋，然后之后就变成首都了。
This is a toad.
这边看到是一只蟾蜍。
It might be a princess.
它有可能是一只公主吧。
I've heard all the stories that when you kiss a toad, it might turn into a beautiful princess.
因为过去说你亲蟾蜍可能变成公主。
And you live happily ever after.
然后他们就过着幸福快乐的日子。
So I thought I would kiss this toad.
所以我想说我应该亲它一下。
And she sat on my deck in the middle of the Baltic, going from island to island until I found an island that was a good island to leave her on.
就是这只蟾蜍就待在我的船的甲板上，
where I would live happily ever after.
所以他后来也过着幸福快乐的日子。
But I wasn't quite sure whether to kiss her or not because she might turn into a beautiful princess. But on the other hand, I might turn into a toad.
那时候考虑说到底要亲她，因为她可能变成公主，那变成公主说我搞不好变成蟾蜍，所以最后没亲她。
In the Bronze Age, they used to carve pictures in the rocks.
在青铜时代，我们可以看到这些岩石上面有一些印记。
We don't understand all their purpose, but these are obviously feet.
我们不确定说它这些印记的作用是什么，不过很明显的这些是脚印。
Some of them have 6 toes, but most of them only have
有些脚趾是6个脚趾哦。
And pictures of people with long spears and shields.
我们可以看到很多人墙上的人都带着长矛，还有带着盾牌。
And also boats.
还有一些船。
We like to go out into the islands to look for things like those stone carvings on the rocks.
然后我们会到处看看，我非常喜欢看到就是石头上面有一些印记。
And also to explore the outer rocks, which are very bare. You just get a few wild flowers in the cracks in the rocks.
然后我们也会到处看看，就是海上的一些石头，然后石头之间还有一些小花。
And you still get quite a lot of wooden sailing ships that like to sail through the archipelago.
我们还可以看到一些就是木质的一些板船。
On one of the islands, it's a museum that you can only get to by private boat, because there is no ferry.
我们就是有一个岛上面有博物馆，然后我们必须要搭船才能过去。
Where they are teaching how to build boats in the traditional style, using wooden pegs.
就是这博物馆会教你怎么制造，就是传统的方式是怎么样制船的。
In the way that has been a tradition since the Viking days, when they built the long ships.
然后他们这些船其实可以追溯到就是维京时代，他们会制造这种非常长的船。
After visiting the museum, we are camping on an island, and there are so many places to camp that you must have a beautiful one every night.
就是我们拜访完博物馆之后，我们就在岛上扎营。
It's nice to camp on the rock, but also if it's very windy, it's good to find one of the islands a little bit closer to the mainland where you have trees for shelter.
就是在岩石上面扎营非常好，不过有时候风非常的大，然后所以说我们会在靠近树的地方扎营，可以挡一些风。
So you see here a little beach
这边有一个小的海滩。
With a route in from both sides, so whichever way the wind is blowing or however rough it is on one side, there's always a sheltered landing and a really nice place to camp.
所以说，我们看到这边有一个海滩呢，就是不管风怎么吹，我们这边就是可以寻求一个比较庇护、比较没有风的地方。
So there are places that I really love to go back and visit because they're so beautiful to be.
所以这个地方非常的漂亮，我总是想要回去再看看。
The ice carved the rock in the last ice age to make it very smooth.
在冰河时期，大家看到这个地形都是覆盖着是冰，所以说这边地形是非常平滑。
You get little grooves in the rock, little channels where the stones have been carried by the rock and have made channels as if someone has taken a comb across the surface of the rock.
在以前的时候，我们看到这个地形上面是有一条一条的纹路，因为当时就会有一些石头，因为风吹或是水流的关系，会制造在这些岩石上面刻画出一些纹路。
And where a stone has been rolling around in one place, it has made holes down into the rock.
我们先看到一些石头会在这样的地形上面滚动，然后这就是这样的缘故，所以产生这样的地形。
The Baltic Sea around this area is a big archipelago, and also around here is a big archipelago. But on the edges of the archipelago, there is plenty of fetch or distance for the wind to make waves.
我们可以看到这两线的地方，其实两边都是一个夹，然后这样的地形就是很容易会有一些波浪。
So with some of the classes that I do out in Sweden, we go out to the rough places to learn how to use the kayaks around the rocks safely.
所以说我们在瑞典上课的时候，会选择这样的地点来上课，让大家了解说要怎么样安全的在这个地方划独木舟。来看到一个人的帽子。
And then back across towards the west coast of the United States.
刚刚看到的是美国的西岸。
And back to Seattle.
回到西雅图来。
And Seattle is on the Puget Sound. You see how there is a big lake here, Lake Washington, then a canal that comes to Lake Union, and then a canal where all the boats are that we saw at the beginning, down through here. And this comes out into the Puget Sound, which is sheltered salt water that runs all the way up to Alaska through the islands.
大家可以从右边到左边可以看到是湖泊一些运河，它就这样顺着流到北方的 Alaska。
But if you don't go north all the way to Alaska, if you just come up to the north here and then turn left and go west, Vancouver Island in Canada is to the north, America is to the south.
它不会一路就是直接到 Alaska， 它会往西边走，然后到加拿大的温哥华。
It's the Pacific Ocean, so if you go far enough, you reach Taiwan.
然后再继续下去，然后就到台湾了。
But right there, when you reach the Pacific Ocean, the entrance of the sound is some of the most beautiful coastline.
在连接就太平洋的地方，可以看到非常漂亮的海岸线。
Which is a national park.
然后这边有一个国家公园。
So you don't find roads or many people.
这地方不会看到很多的人。
Lots of little channels to maneuver.
我们这边有非常多的这些水道，需要学操控。
Practice your boat control to not touch the
控制我们的独木舟，不要撞到，不要触礁。
Some hidden beaches.
还有一些没有人发现的一些海滩。
Forests above.
然后再往上的话就是有些森林，
You usually see eagles.
可以看到老鹰，
Out on the water, you often see whales.
然后在水上的话，我们可以看到鲸鱼。
Tatoosh Island, partway out towards Canada,
然后这边有个岛屿，在过去的话就是加拿大，
with some fast current that runs in through the entrance.
然后这边的的潮水是非常湍急的。
And Tatoosh Island is full of holes. It's like a honeycomb.
那它是这个岛屿呢有很多的洞，
And a lot of the caves have different entrances that come in underneath the water.
然后它们的这个洞有不同的出入口，而且有些还是在水下，
So the light shines from underneath.
所以我们可以看到就是光是从海里面打上来的。
So here you can see that the water is very green
这边的海水大家看到是非常的绿，
compared to the deep blue that you get in the current of the Taiwan coast.
然后跟台湾就是的非常蓝的海水是不一样的。
To go to paddle that part of the coast, it's necessary to take a ferry across the sound from Seattle and then drive. So we take the ferry back, leaving the mountains of the Olympic Peninsula behind and of the coast, and heading in towards the city of Seattle.
我们要常要搭接驳船才可以完成这样的旅程。
And my home is near to Green Lake.
那我的家就在这个地方，
This is a zoo
这边有一个动物园，
and a park,
有个公园，
and my house is about here.
我家大概在这个地方。所以下一站去哪里？
Who knows? This is my book, Encounters from a Kayak, that tells stories from around the world. Some about people, special places, special animals, and the things that wash up on the beaches.
是我的新书叫做《Encounters from Kayak》，因为里面记录的是我遇到一些有趣的人啊、动物啊，还有一些有趣的景点，还有海上冲上来的东西。
Just need a good translator like Spark to translate it into
啊，我这本书需要加翻译
into Taiwanese.
可以很好翻译成中文。
Stepping Stones was my previous
啊，我上一本书叫《Stepping Stones》，
of a number of books, but these are the last two.
那我最新两本书就是这两本。
And this is about paddling up in the Arctic Canada with polar bears, big open crossings, and inukshuks, and a very wild and empty place with some very special people.
那这本书记载的是说在加拿大北端北极海地方的一些我的一些记事啊，我还记得在这个地方我还遇到一些北极熊。
Thank you for coming. My website is nigelkayaks.com.
啊，非常谢谢大家来听我演讲。下面是我的网址，有机会可以去看一下。
And you can find some other stories and pictures on there also.
网站上面还有一些其他的故事，还有一些照片。
So thank you for being here. And does anyone have any questions?
谢谢大家，有没有问题呢？
我们先给人就讲。
Also have to say thank you bringing me here
谢谢我们的主办单位带我来这边。
and to Spark